everybody. You're very welcome to a new episode of Redefining Cybersecurity here on ITSP Magazine. This is Sean Martin, your host, where if you listen to the show, I get to talk to lots of cool people about cool stuff, at least in my mind. I like to nerd out about security and risk management, and not just in the sense of how we protect the business, but actually how we protect its growth and revenue and even the teams. It's all about enabling, from my perspective, and I'm thrilled to have someone you probably all know and have heard of, and maybe even met at some point in your career in cybersecurity. Andy Ellis. Andy, good to see you, man.
Sean, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking the time in your new podcast studio. I was checking out your video studio on your blog. It's pretty cool, and it's pretty chill in the podcast studio there.
The video studio is currently in transition, so I just moved.
Okay.
So I'm in my new house. So I set up the podcasting studio here. The video studio is actually going to run across this. So the camera is going to be to my right here, but the actual green screen will be to my left. And so it'll sort of shoot across, and so I'll be able to do videos over here.
Nice one. I love it. Well, you're very prolific and very giving back to the community, which is great. For those who have not met you yet, maybe a few words about your journey to this point, and then maybe what you're up to at the moment.
Just a few words. It's going to be hard.
I know. The highlights. How about that?
Yeah, went into the Air Force right out of MIT, did information warfare, which is what we called cybersecurity last millennium. Then was at Akamai for 20 years, where I built the security program. I've got a handful of patents for security technologies that sort of underpinned Akamai's global CDN, as well as the security services on top of it. Then took 4 years into the VC world, where I was at YL Ventures, investing and backing and helping startups be amazingly successful. And now I'm on my own doing independent consulting and advising, bringing folks sort of that touch of genius that you just need to sort of get your cybersecurity or your marketing or your product or your leadership program moving.
Got it. And in that last role, I mean, we can touch on some other things as well, but in the last role, in terms of what you're seeing now, do you find individuals and or organizations need help with the first steps or the last mile or fine-tuning the middle bits, or what are you seeing?
So it's actually honestly all of the above.
Okay.
The single biggest mismatch that I often see is many organizations don't know what they want. They often have a security professional and they have no way to understand and put in context what the security professional is telling them. And often the security professional is not an expert in communicating up to a board or to an executive team. And sometimes all that they need is that spark to come in and say, hey, let me listen to everybody and then just translate for you. Like, here's where you are. Here's what you need to be focused on for the next 2 years of your journey. Especially in sort of mid-sized startups, you'll often see this, which is, they're like, oh, we're getting ready for an IPO sometime in the next N years, which means you're not actually getting ready for an IPO, but you're hopeful that one day you'll get to there. But they need to figure out, like, what are the critical things we need to do right now? Not for the next 20 years, not what does a mature program look like. So I could say that's in the middle or that's the start, depending on how you sort of think about where they are in their journey.
And do you tend to be attracted to, be called from certain sectors of the market, regulated or size or anything that?
No, honestly, I've had conversations with everything from like 3-person startups to several thousand-person companies, simply because they're looking for, like, just how do we rethink what we're doing.
And so, as you heard in my intro, I feel that we have an opportunity, and people who listen to the show probably have heard me say this many times, but I feel we have an opportunity, and even more so the data in security, to really help define the business. And when you're talking to small startups, 2-3-person team, there's really an opportunity to get that right. And, so tell me a bit about what some of the things you do there that might be worthwhile.
Yeah, so a great conversation that I love having very early on with the company is to think about, how are you going to run your business? Because historically, the mental models we all have are still stuck in paper. People still remember, oh, we wrote down on paper, we had ledgers, we did this, we did that. And that's not how you run your business anymore. It's not even just that we took the paper and computerized it, which is what was happening, early 2000s. The entire scope of your business is basically SaaS based. Like your business sits on top of other people's businesses. So you can run your company for a long time at 3 people, where you're not, going out and having to hire, a CFO and a lawyer and an ops manager and all of these people who are not part of delivery. Whereas it used to be you needed those fairly early, or you would contract with them. And more we're seeing people are like, well, like, what do I need a lawyer for? Like, I'll contract obviously for a corporate lawyer, but for contract negotiation, like, there's just services that will do this for you. And now it's like, oh, I've got my standard contract template. I've got my standard like vendor management system. You have all of these things. So you have to rethink, what is security, and what is IT support? Because honestly, I think when we talk about cybersecurity as a profession, mostly we're like the pickup crew. We do all the security stuff that nobody wanted to do that was really part of their day job. And that gives an opportunity now to say, well, why don't you make doing that stuff your day job as well? Like, you want to do cybersecurity, then maybe you want to be into SaaS management. You want to manage all the SaaS vendors, become the CIO, and do the security as part of that, and basically sort of take over that IT function and make that one function, which is we will manage our vendors and we'll do it in a secure way. And now we don't separate, cybersecurity from IT management. We just make that one discipline.
And I've certainly seen and heard in the last few weeks. I've been to a legal conference and a healthcare conference,
Mm-hmm.
and in both, one more than legal more than healthcare. There's a lot of push to enable individuals and certainly lines of business to pretty much be their own IT.
Yep.
because of what you're just describing. Everything is SaaS. So how do those teams, and I even had conversations or heard people talk about lawyers actually vibe coding to write AI agents to do things for it. I'm like, I don't know where this is going to go, but I mean,
It's going to be entertaining.
It's going to be entertaining. But that's an extreme case, I think, and we'll see how it happens. But how do you see organizations embracing this idea that there is a line of business that uses SaaS, that is IT, that in your view is also security, rightfully so?
Yeah. Well, I think when we think about the business, one of my least favorite phrases, but it's very illuminating, is shadow IT. Right now, people will say shadow SaaS, shadow AI. But the reason why I say it's illuminating is specifically because it's about perspective. The people who coined the phrase shadow IT were IT professionals who used it in this derogatory fashion to say, like, the IT that is being done in the shadows. But it was not that people went skulking off into the shadow to go do IT away from you. No, they came and they asked you to do IT. They said, I want to go build an e-commerce site. This is 1999. I want to do an e-commerce site. And IT was like, we don't have time for this. Like, the web doesn't really matter. Nobody's going to give you a credit card. And so some engineer went and built an e-commerce site. That was the first real shadow IT that most people think about in the modern world, was your e-commerce site, which now this is how you make money. Like, this is the core center of your business, started as shadow IT. Why was it in the shadows? Because your IT team wouldn't shine a light where it needed to be. The problem was not shadow IT. It was always shadow business. We have parts of our business that we don't see and we refuse to see and support. And so the fact that you have people who are out actively saying, hey, we're going to let IT happen inside the business, because IT is now so consumerized. For most folks, like, you get better support by going to your Apple store than you get from your IT team. So why would you say, oh, you have to have a professional take care of buying a computer for you? And when you do the math of how much logistics time is spent, it doubles the price of a computer. Just getting it into somebody's hand, often you are spending a 100% premium on humans just doing support to get it there. You're better off handing your person an allowance and saying, look, every 2 years, go buy whatever computer you want. Like, make it yours, let it support you, and that we're better off. And that's what people are starting to realize, is let's let IT happen outside of the central organization that was not providing security, was not providing high level support, was not staying ahead of technology trends. And so we're seeing businesses saying, oh, well, AI is just the next thing. So why don't we just get ahead of this? IT will never be able to figure out how to do AI right. So we'll just let the lines of business do it. And I do think it's going to be a train wreck in some ways, but it will also be amazing in others.
And let's touch on both of those. Where do you think we'll see success? I mean, clearly new business innovations and things like
Yeah.
that. But if you have any examples,
I mean,
that'd be
the
great.
success will be just the speed of how people will be able to do things, that there's just always been this activation energy. And I've got a great example because we had a couple friends staying over, great hackers, which means that today I've got to go deal with the fact that like my entertainment system is no longer configured correctly because they got into a playlist war. And so each one was compromising a different system and reconfiguring it to play music. I'll have to go deal with that.
That's a great weekend there.
Great time. But like my wife was talking about one of our long-term projects is creating a cookbook. Like my wife has so many recipes that she's inherited and she's tweaked herself, family tradition. And so she has like this handwritten cookbook with notes that are half in Slovak, half in English. I think there's a couple in French, and she wants to put this all together. And so friends like, well, you should just vibe do this. We're looking at her and she pulls out ChatGPT and she takes a picture of a recipe and says, make me a recipe page for this. So it took my wife's notes on the recipe, turned that into a very nice summary, copied the recipe faithfully and put in commentary, put in nutritional information. And this basically was like 30 seconds of prompt engineering. Like this wasn't even the serious stuff.
And it produced HTML, CSS. What did it?
So in this case, it just handed here was text, but then it said,
content, okay.
what format do you want this in? Would you like to have this in a PDF? Do you want to have this in a JSON file? And I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, so like a couple hours of vibe coding and I can basically have a recipe manager that will output a book at the end of it. And I was looking at probably a couple hundred hours of work dealing with each individual recipe, and most that's now gone away. It'll still obviously have to be edited, but just that's an example, and it's a silly one. And people are going to be like, oh, Andy, great, you'll get a recipe book published that like 5 people will ever read. Those are 5 really important people to me, by the way, that I really do want them all to read it. But now take that for every single harebrained idea everybody in your company has. They can go execute on and see if it will work, and they don't need your approval. And even if the failure rate is 99%, 99% of those ideas are throwaway ideas. They do their couple hours of work. They're like, whatever. Maybe it makes my life easier, maybe not. If one of those transforms your business, that's power.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, I think I'm just thinking of, we used to call them skunkworks projects.
Right.
We had,
right.
Sad that we had dedicated people. Yeah.
Yes. Right. And that's the whole thing, which is Skunkworks was we made this official IT, but we hid it from everybody. We protected it from the business. And then Shadow IT became, well, we'll just do it ourselves because you won't support us. And now we're in this world where it's like, well, let's have AI do it for us.
And I guess the cool thing about your example and bringing that into a business, each little function of each person's role could be seen differently, or depending on where they live, or who the customers they're interacting with, or I don't know, the types of customers they serve, could slightly, very nuanced ways, change the way their workflow works.
Yep.
Or looks, or functions, or maybe they want mobile versus web, or whatever it is, and perhaps there's an easy way to help them work through some of those challenges, jump those hurdles a little more quickly.
So in a sense, there's a space in the world for an advisor to say, let me be your guide and help you. Like, you want to go vibe code, great, but that 5 hours you're going to spend, a bunch of it is not efficient or not effective, right? You don't know how to do the right prompt engineering. Let me teach you. And so I think there's an opportunity for security professionals to step in who've always been sort of adversarial inclined towards technology. Here's new tech, we know how to break it. But part of knowing how to break it is we know how to exploit it in great ways. So take that mindset and help your company exploit these new technologies.
And what about, we didn't cover the negatives, maybe we'll touch on that as we dig in here a little bit more. But I'm curious about the what you're describing here in the security operations or security management world, where security is actually doing the same thing and creating new things and
Yeah, I think security ops is going to be really fascinating because half of security ops is, and I know I'm going to have people send me hate mail for this. It's make work, which is the business does not allow us to fix certain problems. And so we go find them and now we tell people about them and we track them, but we're never going to actually fix them. Think about patch management and how much of it never really happens, right? In a sense, there's this benefit, which is, oh, we can use AI to do the make work and like it'll track and manage and all of this stuff. Um, but at the end of the day, it's still not going to make it better because the problem isn't that it's too expensive for us to fix things. It's that the business doesn't actually want to fix things. And until we move past that, the AI in operations is going to have some utility. I'm not going to say it's worthless, but it's not going to be the game changer people think it is.
Yeah, because I have this utopian vision that, and I kind of alluded to a little bit, that we have a lot of data, and I think, and to your point, I think we can guide the business to make changes that are better for the business and better for security. And
Yep.
the patch management's the great example I like to use, where if you're maintaining a list of 1,000 CVEs or patches you need to make, and you never fix them, just over and over and over, you're scanning, you're assessing, you're adding until maybe fix 5 this month, 5 next month, whatever. You're adding 10 each
Right.
time. Perhaps in the data, there's something that says you're just using the wrong component, or the stack is built in the wrong way, or you're collecting a piece of, you're connecting
Right.
two things together that shouldn't be connected. And if you just change that, you can eliminate 50% of the
And
patches.
like I've had experience doing that in my career. Like when I was at Akamai, we ran into this with OpenSSL. Every time there was an OpenSSL vulnerability, we'd have to go patch stuff. And the number of engineers who would fight with us because they're like, I'm just using OpenSSL for the math library. Like it's the most efficient math, and we're doing big math, so we're using OpenSSL for this. We don't have to patch it. And we're like, yes, but we can't tell from outside. And now you make our life harder. So at some point we said, well, what if, and we employed OpenSSL engineers on staff, like there's a way of getting the things we wanted fixed into OpenSSL was we just paid them, paid our engineers and said, well, 20% of your time we would like you to go give back, but 80% is we want you to add the things we want into OpenSSL. And so we said, well, what if we just split OpenSSL and separate the math library from the network library? So when there's vulnerabilities in the network stack and in how cryptography is being done, then we will know that only the components that use that half of the library are vulnerable, rather than all these other ones, which was these massive things we were doing. And all the engineers love that. They're like, oh, this is great. We can now use the library that only has what we want in it. So that's an example of like, you can do code analysis to figure that out. We just did it qualitatively. And so maybe it gives us this opportunity to start refactoring larger and larger code bases down into something more manageable.
So what was the trigger for that?
2014 when OpenSSL had to be patched critically like 3 times in a year.
Right. So the team just fell over, got upset. They were all...
Right. Like we had people yelling at us, and so we sat down and we're like, well, what if we did this? The easiest way to keep track of it is to just take that code away from them and say, if you're never going to use this code, then you don't have it in your code base, which means vulnerabilities never impact you.
Yep. So the reason I asked that question is, I mean, that's a pretty significant event or series of events and impact on the team. There may be more subtle ones that, if addressed, perhaps have the same results. But it's just drawn out over time, so you don't have the bang, 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 three patches.
And so that's a place where data analytics can help us find things, but you still need to really have the organizational buy-in to do it. Like, in a sense, it's easier to patch than to refactor. So what I'm proposing here was not actually easier than fixing once, but it was certainly easier than fixing so many times. Right. So that's where it becomes useful. So the challenge is something that is subtle that people don't really see up front. It's going to be a lot harder to convince people to say, oh, it's like, why don't we minimize all of our packages? Like, this is an obvious thing everybody should do, is minimize your packages. Right. OpenSSL is actually a great example. There's like competing libraries. For most people, you should probably think about not using OpenSSL. Right. Now, I had a board member who was always like, well, aren't we using S10? I'm like, well, that's because we actually use every feature of OpenSSL. Like, we have to be compatible with everything. We can't just say, oh, we're just doing one thing, right? It's the same thing behind like when Dan Bernstein wrote his DNS packages to say, like, why are we all using bind, which does a million things for name service, when what you want is you want an authority. It does not need to be bind. It should be, DJB DNS.
So do CISOs have a voice to drive those changes? Sounds like no, but
so in general, the answer is no.
All right.
But you can get the voice. And here's sort of the secret, which is you spend political capital to get people to do things. You earn political capital when the things people do on your behalf are successful. It's really simple. Like, you're just making investments and you hope they pay off. So every time you spend political capital and there's no win, boom, you've lost that capital forever. So, one of the things that I recently wrote, I republished, I should say, is like the first 91-day guide for CISOs. It says, like, look, you're in a new role, whether it's your first time as a CISO or your 15th time, whether you don't even have the CISO title, like, here's a guide to walking into your company and saying, what are the critical questions? Like, who is this company? What do they do? How do they operate? But core to it is two questions that I recommend people ask of everybody they talk to. Like, you go and you talk to your peers, you talk to stakeholders, anybody, you ask them two questions. And they're really simple, easy questions. You're basically saying, what's the stupid stuff I should go do first? And the way you phrase this is like, what is the security thing we're doing that gets in the way that you have no idea why we're doing it and you wish it would go away? Now, it might be an important thing. They're wrong, and your job is going to be to explain to them how important it is. But odds are they're going to say something like, well, like, I have to type in my password 7 times every morning. I thought we had single sign-on. And you're like, I didn't know that. Let me go figure out. Like, my team told me we had single sign-on when I showed up. Let's go figure out what's going on so I can get rid of typing in your password 7 times. And then you also ask the flip side of that, which is, what's the most obvious security thing we should be doing that we're not? Right. And the reason you ask these two questions is to get political capital, because it does not cost you anything to ask these questions. And people will basically hand you a set of projects that are all quick wins, because they've evaluated and they say, this is all easy problems to go fix. Even if they're wrong 50% of the time, you have so many projects. You just walk in the door, you listen to those, and that is your roadmap. Like, you don't walk in and say, well, I have this vision of what I'm going to go do. No, your first 91 days, the only projects you start are the clean up the messes your predecessor or your lack of a predecessor left for you, unless they were completely amazing, in which case, okay, now you'll have to work hard to find your quick wins. But every one of those you do gives you the ability to ask for something else.
Interesting. And then, yeah, so you could pretty much ask that from any part of the business.
Exactly. You go talk to your CFO. Yeah. You ask, like, they may not have a finance security related answer for you. They may just say, as a user, I hate that we do this. Or they may be like, we have all these security projects and like everyone promises some ROI and I never see that money. So can we stop talking about ROI on your projects? Great. Like, they just told you not to use the language of dollars, and now you're not going to have to worry about that. Okay, great. That's an easy change to make. And you can say, hey, how would you like me to, communicate in the future, this cost benefit trade-off?
And so I want to talk about the book a little bit more and or the guide, but first 91 days.
Yep.
In one sense, you could think, all right, I'm a new CISO. I'm going to do this for the first 91 days. And then I said it, I leave it behind me. The guide.
You could.
Yeah, you could. I'm just wondering, have you found that people pick it up again in 6 months or a year? And not that they're new in a role, not that they changed roles, not that they made any significant change to the program, but perhaps there's enough change in 6 months.
Yep.
Collectively or in a year that says now's a good time to purposefully reevaluate these for the next
So
91 days again.
I've certainly had a couple CISOs who've said that they use it and they touch back to it, but it's not really designed for that. Like the purpose of this is to get your heads on straight. Like you've come into a new role. Like, is this a company that will tolerate a draconian security policy, or do you have to do something laissez-faire? Like, you don't really need to reevaluate that after 6 months, but maybe you want to go back and say, hey, did I actually get the right answers? Because it might be that my belief in the company is not the company that I actually ended up in. And so what I thought in those first few weeks, I need to go back and reevaluate. So certainly there is some value there. But no, this was designed for a very specific point in your career, which is you're doing the job transition. Here's how to approach it. Now, this is useful. About 80% of that guide is not about being a CISO. It's just about how do you enter a new role. So I've had a lot of professionals reach out and say, hey, I took a new gig as this, I got promoted, and I use this guide as my sort of handbook for it. But I don't have great metrics because honestly, I just give this away. It's literally on howtociso.com. You can go there, click on the library, and I think it's the second thing in the library is the first 91-day guide.
Which is super cool that you make that available. So we'll include a link to that for everybody to access as well. What are some of the other things you've published some books as well?
So I've got a book. I've got it behind me for those of you who are watching. So it's 1% Leadership, which is, for me, I think it's the best leadership book anybody can ever read. It's because I've read a lot of leadership books. I've been to a lot of leadership training. And in my experience, they all have the same set of failures. Right. The first one is they usually pick somebody who's a successful business person, and it's a hagiography. We're basically saying, oh, this person is amazing. Like Jack Welch is the best leader ever. And so it's a lot of a biography that is fluffing up someone. And so trying to say everything they did was great. But then they basically reduce this person's leadership style down to one thing. So like, what do we know about Jack Welch? Oh, he stack ranked everybody on the ladder and fired the bottom 10% every year. Like Jack Welch did a lot of great things. This is not the defining feature of his leadership style, but it's the one thing that he did that's easy to point out. So we reduce it to that, and then we pretend that if you just do this, you'll be amazing, right? So these are sort of the three. It's this hagiography. We reduce it down to one thing, and we pretend that one thing is sufficient as a leader. And like fire your bottom 10% of your staff every year. That only works if you need to get rid of 50% of your staff within a couple of years, which is what GE was facing in the 80s. Like that's part of Jack Welch's greatness was he came into a company that needed to downsize and he had a way to go do it. So when I wrote 1% Leadership, it actually started as essays to my team because we would bring in leadership training from outside and I'd go to it and I'm like, okay, here's the lesson you need to learn from this. And here's how I think you should think about applying it. Here's just a short essay blog post. I'll send it to you. I would share it with some peers. Some of them would send it to their teams. And what I realized is that leadership is a set of skills. There's not one style. You are never going to be the same leader I am. That's just not our personalities. The environments we're in are all different. But like anything, that's just skills. Like being a quarterback is skills. Patrick Mahomes, probably the greatest quarterback of this generation, looks nothing like Tom Brady. But we can look at both of them and say, wow, these are amazing, great, fantastic quarterbacks. But they have a lot of skills in common. Like they both have pocket presence and awareness. And you can walk through the set of skills that they each apply differently. And so leadership is the same way. You have to recognize that as a leader, you need to practice a bunch of skills. And so this is the book that is the collection of skills.
Based on a lot of trainings that you've
lot of it based on trainings I've been to, insights I've had as a manager, as a leader. A lot of it is sort of counterpoints. I watched somebody do it badly and I said, oh, here's the lesson in what they did wrong or in the one thing that they got right. And I could pull that out, extract that. I didn't try to hide the messages. So it's not like some of those books that you've read where you're 3 chapters in, you're like, I think I know what the message is, but they won't tell me because why would I buy the book if they just made it a tweet at the beginning? The chapter headers are all the tweet summary of the chapter. Okay. So here is the lesson. Here's the tweet summary of it. And if that's good enough for you, don't bother reading the chapter. Or read the chapter. On average, they're 750 words. They're basically short blog posts that summarize, because that's one of my skills, is to be able to concisely summarize and message a storyline. in a fast fashion.
Yeah. Well, it all comes down to the story, and
Yep.
then and I presume in there is the context. So you can get the lesson
Right.
from the top level, but the context
Right.
is that
So the
designed to
way
help them picture themselves in the scenario?
Yeah, so I write them. They're all written slightly differently, but in general, they sort of follow the model of, a Zen koan or a Gemara story, which is like, here's the lesson, high level. Then here's a story about where the lesson came from. And then here's a message about how you should do it. So one of my favorite chapters, which is inclusion is reducing the energy cost people pay just to exist in your space.
Say that again.
Inclusion is reducing the energy cost people pay just to exist in your space. Right? When someone, and so the starts with stories of like, imagine some employee Taylor. And then what's funny is all of the examples are from my own career. Like, they walk in or from, I've seen to other people or to me, but it's like they walk in and you're serving lunch, but they have dietary restrictions. So now they have to figure out what they can eat because you didn't bother to ask in advance or if they can even eat. And so while everybody else gets to work, they're spending 5 minutes stressing and energizing about what they're going to do. Or you try to do a last minute meeting at the end of the day, but you've got a parent who has to go pick up a kid. And so now they're spending energy trying to reschedule this meeting with your admin who just got told, get this meeting done by the end of the day. And these are just things that cause people to spend energy. And our whole job as leaders is very simple. The people in our organization spend energy to produce value. Our job is to maximize that. And that sounds like horribly utilitarian and bloodthirsty, like you don't care about people. But the reality is you have to care about people to make that an efficient transaction. Because so much of the energy cost is because nobody cares. And so if I say you are spending 80% of your energy not producing value, and if I can just be nice to you, you will spend half of that goes away. And so now you're only spending 40% of your energy, dealing with the fact that you're not producing value. But now I get 60% of your energy produces value. Like, you just go do this. And I have a friend of mine who he calls it the angel and devil managers. Like, imagine you have an angel manager on your shoulder who basically whispers in your ear and only tells you to do nice things. They're like, take care of the employee, make the employee the center. You want to be a servant leader, screw your boss because they don't really matter. The company's heartless. So take care of your employees. And on the other end, shoulder, you have the devil manager who's like, screw the employee, like maximize how much value you get out of them. Your job is to be a fiduciary to the company, maximize the value. You don't care about the humans. Now listen to the advice that those caricatures give you. And what you'll find is in a lot of situations, they will give you the same advice. Right? They will tell you things like, when your employee is burnt out, send them home. Because the angel's saying because that's the right thing to do for the human, and the devil is saying because they're not producing anything of value right now, make them go get some sleep so you can exploit them tomorrow. They're both telling you to do the same thing because exploiting them long-term for value actually lines up with take care of them. What doesn't line up is exploit them right now, but exploiting them right now is bad for your business because you don't have them tomorrow.
So interesting. And do you find? Thank you for that. Do you find? I mean, this clearly isn't a security leadership book.
It's not just security, but I have found that when you have to manage through influence, you really have to focus on your leadership, which is really why this became a core passion for me. Was how did I manage a team that needed to lead through influence, and it was a cast of characters. And so, how do I get the maximal value out of them? Create a safe place. And you get side benefits. Like, I spent my last 15 months when I was at Akamai with 0 turnover. A 94-person team with not a single person who left. Now, granted, we overlapped with COVID, so that might have helped a bit. But even before that, like, we had lower turnover than all of our peer organizations. And when you just do the math of how much extra value you get, especially the security team, where you need to know where the skeletons are in the company.
Yep.
Like, every time somebody turns over, your organization becomes remarkably ineffective because you have to now go rebuild relationships, relearn what the problems are. And so every day you can retain somebody, your organization is better off for it.
So I want to I could talk to you for hours about this stuff, especially opening this next question, I think. But so I want to wrap with this, and we can have another chat another time. But in the leading a team by influence versus by MBOs, let's say,
Yep.
describe the CISO role there, because you do have direct reports, but then there's the broader. So
Right.
being a leader across that, maybe tell us a little story about
So
that.
one of the biggest challenges I've run into is like, how do you measure success as a CISO? And there are people who are super metrics focused. In fact, I did a talk at RSA, I don't even know, 2 or 3 years ago. It's like, you can't measure risk. That sort of fits like went through a bunch of the dashboards people like doing, like, here's why all of these metrics are awful. And at the end of the day, one of the biggest challenges is the more metrics you have, the less valuable work you get done, because you force people to work the metric. Right? There's a phrase, it's like you expect what you inspect, which started out, people thought, oh, like if you don't look at it, you can't expect a good outcome. But what it really ends up being is that whatever you are looking at is what you're going to get more of. So every MBO, people will manage towards that. My most recent gig, like we had a marketing team with so many MBOs that when I came in and said, like, here's this great thing we do, everyone was like, it's amazing, we should do this, but we can't. I'm like, why not? They're like, there's no space for it. We have a set of OKRs, the other new phrase for MBOs, like that we have to get done, and we have to work on this, and we can't do anything that's not in this list because we don't have enough time to do what's on this list. And this is what we're measured on. So you have to really pay attention to that as a CISO. Is you should only be measuring the things that are going to be producing value, and you should make sure that you are not measuring everything your team does, because when you do that, you remove all of their initiative.
And how about in that scenario or that picture, then is measuring just your own team
Yep.
is not enough either, right?
It's not, but you have to figure out what is the meaningful measure. Like,
Right.
how do you measure the organization in a way that the organization will accept? Because sometimes they don't. Like, I would love to be able to just do a scorecard for every line of business and say, look, you're a C. Nobody else in the company is a C. You should fix that. Because that would work in a lot of companies. Like, you just say, like, organizationally, here's where you stand. Like, I could do this for security awareness training, is my favorite one, because ours was so lightweight. You literally just had to go click a link on a web page, and you were self-certifying that you were trained, but that web page had everything on it you needed. And like, so is the easiest thing. As a company, we stayed above 96% all the time, just with a cron job. Like, nobody ran this program. A cron job was in charge of the program. So it's like having an AI agent 15 years ago. But nonetheless, every so often I would notice that there was a team, I had a dashboard that would show that was like, they're only at 50% compliance. And so all that I would have to do is I would just drop them a note, and I'd say, hey, I just noticed that you're the largest team that has the lowest compliance rate. And here's the compliance rates of all of your peer teams. And here's a link to the dashboard. You can go look and see who on your team hasn't done it. And like, it's just a form letter. Like, the dashboard produced this letter for me. So I would just say, give me the letter for this person. And I would click send. And just by showing them this one metric every once in a while, like, I'm not beating them over the head with this once a month. It's literally every year I would go in and like 5 people would get this note. It changed how they operated, because that was personally embarrassing to them that I had taken the time to call them out. And that's what you have to think about when you do metrics. Any metric that looks bad, that you show people over and over and over again, they get inured to, and they're like, there's no consequence to me for being bad.
Right.
So if instead you're like, well, here's the great metrics, always celebrate success, because people are more incentivized by rewards than by punishments. So whenever people do a big security project, we would have cake with them and the CEO, and we would talk about the project in front of the CEO and serve everybody cake. And I had engineering managers coming to me saying, what security work do I have to get done to have cake with the CEO? Like, how many people get that, where random people are saying, I want to work for you, even though like, you have not come to me and asked me to do anything. I want to do stuff for you, because that's the only way for the CEO to learn my name, because nobody else does this.
Let them eat cake.
Yep.
I love it. Oh boy, my brain's going a mile a minute here. Bunch of questions. We're at 40 minutes in though. Andy, it's always great to see you, my friend, and to chat with you. I'd like to have you back. Maybe
Absolutely.
maybe talk more about the program. I wanted to talk about culture and all kinds of stuff, but maybe we'll I don't know. Maybe we'll catch up in Vegas for Black Hat. I don't know if
No,
you're gonna
I
be.
will not be
You're
in
not
Vegas
either.
for Black Hat. I'm
All
very
right.
happy that I have nobody mandating that I go right now.
There you go. All right, we'll take that break, and when I get back, maybe we'll have a wrap about what I saw and heard, and I can get
Yeah,
your insights in that. So,
sounds great, Sean.
all right, everybody listening and watching, thanks for joining me. Hopefully you enjoyed this as much as I did, and do connect with Andy. Grab the guide, grab the book, and stay tuned for more here on ITSP Magazine, Redefining Cybersecurity. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.